Hello, let's go ahead and talk about the implementation of your music and sound effects into the AngryBots game using Wwise. Once you have downloaded everything from FSO, I would suggest that you create a folder, either located on your desktop or in some other location, and place the game application and your Wwise project folder next to each other. If I opened up this folder, you'll see all of the assets or all of the files for the Wwise project, and that needs to be in a folder located directly next to the game application. If you don't set this up at this point, then later on down this process, you might run into some issues. A couple of other resources that you should probably have quick access to. I'm just going to bring in a folder that I created that has all of my music and sound effects files in it. So here are the 7 music files that you will be using for your music soundtrack, and all of the sound effects files necessary for the game. A lot of these are the ones that you created, and also the original files that are provided for other sounds in the game. And I just put all of them together so that I can quickly work with them. So we need to have all of the WAV file assets. I like to put them into the same folder so I always know where they are. As long as you know where these files are located and you can have quick access to them, you will be fine. And something else that I'm going to bring in here is the asset list PDF. If I bring this up, it is going to show all of the files, both the WAV files and the events that are going to be created for this project. So it's going to tell you exactly your WAV files, what events they're connected to. It gives a column for the category of sound. It also talks about the proper attenuation that needs to be set, and we'll talk about this later on in the process, and also refers to any file that needs to loop or not. So the first 2 pages are sound effects. The last page here is all of the music. So I'm going to get a quick reference from that information here every once in a while. So those should be the files that I need to get started. And let's go ahead and open up Wwise to get the process started. Going to launch Wwise, and then we are going to open up the AngryBots project, Wwise project, that was provided with this assignment. So I'm going to go click Open Other and navigate to that particular folder where I had placed all of the files. I'm going to go to AngryBots Wwise, and in there you will find the .wproj file that is necessary for this session. So I'm going to open it up. And in our previous assignments, we have already discussed and done an overview of Wwise, and so I would hope that you have a understanding about how to navigate between the different windows and layouts as I move through this application. So I'm going to start out in the designer layout where we're going to spend most of our time, and I'm going to start out by bringing the music in and creating the music system, and then I will bring in the sound effects, set everything up and build the project, and then test it out in the game. So just to give you some information on the elements that are provided, we're going to start out here in the audio tab, but over here in events, you have certain events that are already created and ready to go. And these are here because these are directly referenced in the game, and we have to make sure that these are set up properly. Along with the events that we will be filling with our audio, over here in the Sound Banks tab, there is a AngryBots Wwise sound bank that is ready to go. and it's going to hold all of the audio in our actor mixer hierarchy. It's going to hold all of the event information, any of our setup in the interactive music hierarchy, and any of the buses that we set up in our master mixer hierarchy. All right, we can start back over here, and again, I'm going to go to the designer view. I'm going to start in my interactive music hierarchy, and I can start bringing in the music files that I need to work with. So I will open up my AngryBots asset folder, go find the music that I need, highlight all of these files, and I'm going to drag them into the default work unit. This will open up the audio file importer. All of the default settings should be ready to go. So I'm just going to hit import here, and it gives me a music segment for each one of the music tracks or audio files that I imported here. So ambient, buzzer action, buzzer stinger, mech action, mech stinger, spider action, and spider stinger. And just to get the stingers out of the way for the time being, I'm going to click on my default work unit here. I'm going to create a new virtual folder. This folder is not much more than just a folder that holds a group of objects together, or in this case, it's music segments. So I want to make sure that this goes underneath this default work unit. So I'm going to press that, and I'm just going to call this stingers. And then I can go to my buzzer stinger, I can go to my mech stinger and my spider stinger. I'm just going to drag those in there, mostly to get them out of the way for the time being. Now, as mentioned previously, our music is going to be set up in a vertical music system. This is going to be a different setup in Wwise than our previous project, and there's not too much involved in getting it set up here in the interactive mixer hierarchy. The real magic is going to happen in the events that we set up later. So to start out here, I need these to be playing together. So if I hit all the pluses here, you will see the different actual music tracks that are in each one of these music segments. So the music tracks you can think of as the actual WAV files. The music segment then gives us some options to what are we going to do with this music file, including the same or similar generic settings like volume, low pass filter, high pass filter, playback speed, the ability to route it to buses and sends. But one of the main things that we get over here that is specific to our interactive music hierarchy is the ability to set the tempo and time signature and be able to trigger the music according to the tempo and the pace of the music. So we are not going to use this currently, but these are some of the settings that a music segment provides. So what we're going to do is we are going to add each one of these action music tracks into one music segment here. We're just going to put them all in this music ambient. This allows them to eventually play back together. And you'll see what I mean here in just a moment. Music ambient, that doesn't really describe it anymore, so we are going to call this music_AngryBots, because it's going to represent most of the music system that we need. All right, this puts all four of these into one music segment called Music AngryBots. And that means we do not need these segments anymore. I'm going to highlight each one of those and choose delete. You can also hit the function and delete key on your keyboard to delete those. Now, here we have all four of these in one playlist. Sorry, all four of these in one music segment. And to see the reason that we did this, we're going to switch over to the interactive music hierarchy. No, the interactive music layout. And now if I click on this music segment, music_AngryBots, you'll notice that all four of my tracks are vertically laid on, out on top of each other so that they play back together, sort of like a multi-track DAW session. We have points up here. The green indicator is an entry cue, where the music is going to start. The red one over here is the exit cue, where the music is going to stop. And all four of these are the same length, so they are going to work together. Eventually, they are going to loop, but the music the music segment on its own does not have the ability to loop. The blue one down here is the playhead, play cursor, so it knows where it is located at any one time. All right, so by placing all four of these into a music segment, we get the vertical layout of our music, or the ability to play them together. And if we were to hit play at this point, it would play all four of them at unity, or at 0 dB here, which is not currently what we want. We want a couple of extra functionality here. We need all four of these to start at the same time, stop at the same time, and loop together. And when we start, we only want the ambient cue to play. Then we want to be able to bring the other pieces of music in and out as necessary, depending on the actions in the game. So, by itself, this music segment will not loop. We need a playlist to do that. So I'm going to click back on this default work unit up here, and I'm going to choose a music playlist container to allow these files to loop. And I'm going to call this music underscore AngryBots underscore playlist. So that for our music system, we have our playlist, which will mainly allow us to loop. So I'm going to take this music segment and drag it in here. And I'm in the interactive music layout. I've put this music segment into this playlist, but I haven't set it up in a particular group. So along with putting it in here, I'm also going to drag it down into this sequence continuous group. Now, all we want it to do is to start playing this one. And once it plays this one, we want it to loop. So we have our loop count over here, and I'm going to end up setting both of these to infinite. Really, you only should need this AngryBots set to infinite to loop, but I'm going to put this both here, so just in case, for some reason, if the game stopped this AngryBots, this sequence continuous would start it to play again, and it would loop kind of invisibly. So that's really all we need to do with our music playlist. All four of these are set up to play at the same time. They start at the same time, they end at the same time, and we told our playlist to just loop it over and over and over again as long as we need it. So now we need the ability to start that loop, we need the ability to stop the loop, we need the ability to change the mix in real time. So that will get us set up for importing the music files and setting up the vertical music so that it can vertical arrangement of the music so it can play back correctly. Now we need to be able to start and stop it and manipulate it with different events playing from the game. So to continue the setup here, there's not that much involved in the setup from the audio side of it, but how we actually interact with it and to make it much more responsive to the game, we can use our events for that. So I'm going to switch over to the Events tab. And in my Events default work unit, you're going to find all of the music events. I open that up, and you'll see that there are events already set up for your music and ready for the playback, the correct playback of how these files are going to operate. So we have play music system buzzer in, we have a buzzer out. So this is basically when the buzzer robots make their appearance, where the battle starts with the buzzer and then it ends with the buzzer. We said that the buzzer robot is based off of health points. If either you shoot the robot or the robot zaps you, somebody loses health and the music will start. That's when buzzer in is called. Then buzzer out is when that robot has been destroyed, then the music needs to leave. So let's start with these and we'll just kind of go down the list, setting up each one of them. So when the buzzer, well, actually, you know what? Let's start with start. Would probably be the most logical place. When the game starts, this play music system start event is called. And when this plays, we need a couple of things to happen. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to play the playlist so that the entire music system starts. And we can do this clicking on the music system start. We are going to go and create a play event, and we are going to browse for the correct event, or sorry, the correct audio to play. And what we need to do is we need to play this playlist, which in turn will start the music segment to play. So we hit OK there. And we can't just play it because it is going to play all four of them at full volume. So another action that we have in our event here is the ability to change the voice volume. And we can individually address each one of the ambient and each one of the action cues and change their volume. So I'm going to set the volume, and I want to set the volume of particular files. I'm going to set the volume of the ambient cue, and I want that volume to be at 0. I want it to be at unity, so it's the only one that's going to be heard. And I want to make sure that volume is set to 0 immediately. So you have the volume that you want it to be set at, and how quickly do you want it to get there. For the ambient, it's going to be the only one that is heard. So we need to make sure that the other ones are not heard. I go to my voice volume, I choose set voice volume, and this time I'm going to go to my buzzer action cue. And I want its volume at all the way down here at -96, and I want it to immediately go there, basically to mute it. Then I'm going to go and create another set voice volume. And we're going to do this for each of the action cues. I'll do mech action, and I want it to go to -96. And then I'm going to do set voice volume, and I'm going to choose the spider action cue and hit OK. Take its volume and set it down to -96. All right, so we have our start cue. It starts playing, it sets the volume of the ambient to unity, and then basically mutes all of the other ones. But they are playing in the background, so they all start together and end together. Now, we want the battle music to come in and out. We want the action music to play. And we have a buzzer in and a buzzer out, or we have an in and out for each of the buzzer, mech, and spider cues. So when the game starts, the ambient cue starts. When the buzzer battle starts playing, all we want to do is, again, we're going to set the voice volume, and we want it to come up to unity. Maybe we want it to take 1 second to fade up to unity. And you can actually change the curve of how you want. A linear might work, maybe a logarithmic curve also might be helpful. So we set the voice volume. We set the voice volume of the buzzer action cue, and it gets set over 1 second. It fades from -96 up to unity. Then when the buzzer is done, we want it to set the voice volume, and we want to fade it out. We want to fade out the buzzer action cue. We're going to fade this to -96, but I typically suggest a pretty long fade time, right? 10, 20, 30 seconds might be all right. I think for my system, I had these fading out over 25 seconds, and I had them fading out over a nice logarithmic curve. So set the voice volume back to -96, and I'm going to do this for each one of the robots. So I'm going to set voice volume. This time it's for the mech. It's fading in to Unity, and I want to do it over 1 second. Then I go to mech out. I set its volume. I browse to the mech, hit OK, and I want to fade it out over 25 seconds to -96. And again, use a similar curve, logarithmic curve there. Now, the fade in of 1/2 a second, or sorry, in this case, 1 second, or the fade out of 25 seconds is entirely up to you. This is how you want your music to function and play back in the game. So I overall have found that a quicker fade in and a longer fade out is the best way to approach this music system that's pretty quickly fluctuating. So, mech in, mech out, spider in. We want to set the volume, set voice volume of the spider. And I believe that even 1 second might be a too slow of a fade in, but we'll see once we test this out. Set those up. We're going to go to spider out here. We're going to set the voice volume of the spider action cue. And we want, this is the out, so we want it to fade to -96 over 25 seconds. And we'll choose the logarithmic setting there. All right, so we've done our start cue. We have our buzzer in and buzzer out cues. We have our mech in and mech out, spider in and spider out. So we have the stop music system, and this is really easy, so I'm just going to do this right here. I'm going to go hit stop. I want to just choose stop, not stop all. I mean, I guess, well, that would stop all audio events. So we just want to stop here, and we want to stop the music playlist. This is basically going to stop everything. If maybe at the end of the game, or if at some other point we needed to, maybe at the end of the level, we needed to hard cut. More than likely, this is not actually going to be called for our game because it is the music's constantly going in the background. But that sets everything up. We have a stop command. How long do we want to fade out? Maybe when it stops, we'll fade it out over 5 seconds. And maybe a linear fade will work there. So the stop is pretty simple. We've done start, player death. Now, this is when, if you lose all of your health, you kind of respawn back in this, I don't know, teleport tube or something like that. And we need the music to return back to normal. So we want it to make sure that the ambient cue is playing at full volume, and we want to fade out any other pieces of music that happen to be playing. So I'm going to, again, we do all of this from just voice volumes. Really, we're just controlling automation that fades in and out different pieces of music. So I'm going to set the voice volume of the ambient cue. More than likely, this has not changed. It's probably already at Unity. Maybe a second crossfade time if necessary. Just to, if this is kind of a fail-safe, if necessary, we can return the volume of ambient piece of music back to Unity, 0 dB volume. Next, we're going to set the voice volume for, let's just fade out each one of these action cues. So we'll do a buzzer action cue. Again, this is when you respawn. When you lose all of your health points, die, and then come back. Negative 96, we're going to fade it all the way out, and maybe we'll do a slow fade again. So over 5 seconds. The battle, but what this does is you were fighting in the battle, you lost that battle, and you respawn somewhere away from the battle. So it's not just going to hard turn it off, but it will fade out back to the base layer so that you can start over again. All right, that works for each one of these. So voice volume, I'll do that for the mech. And we're not necessarily sure that these are playing, but it will guarantee that if they are, then it will fade it out to silence. Voice volume for the spider action cue, and we're going to fade that out to negative 96 over 5 seconds. All right. This sets up how the player death music is kind of triggered and played back. This will reset the music system. What else do we have? End of level. This is when you end the game and you win. So let's maybe fade out the music at this point. And see how we'll set up the end of the game. So I'm going to take my voice volume of each one of these and just fade them out over, let's say, 10 seconds. So it'll take a little while to fade out, but all of the music will fade out. Maybe it'll fade to just, maybe it will fade to just sound effects. I think that's too many. That's 5. All right, let's do each one of these. Browse ambient. Browse. Oh, oops. I messed up. These all need to be voice volume, not bus volume. Voice volume. This is the difference between voice volume and bus volume. Is the difference between adjusting the fader and adjusting the volume into a bus. So this is individual sounds, but buses could be groups of sounds. All right, now I should be able to go into the buzzer action, the mech action, and the spider action. And what do I want to do with each one of these? I want to fade it out over, I'll just type it in, 10 seconds. I want to fade it out over the course of 10 seconds. All right, now that we have all of our music events set up, let's go ahead and test everything out to make sure it is playing back as we expect. We can do this through the Soundcaster function in Wwise. We're going to go to the Views menu and scroll down here towards the bottom where you can find Soundcaster. Go ahead and open that up. We need to create a new Soundcaster session to get started. So I'm going to hit these double arrows up here and choose New. I'm going to use the default name for everything and click OK. Then I can highlight each one of these music events and drag them into our Soundcaster session, and you can see that each one of them is laid out. So let's go ahead and take a listen to what we have, make sure everything is functioning correctly. I'll start out with music start. All right, everything starts playing, but only the ambient cue is heard. Just to make sure, let's hit stop here and make sure that fades out. Looks like everything is fading out correctly. So we'll start this up again. And this time the mech comes into play. So we'll hit, this time the buzzer comes into play. So we'll hit buzzer in. And we hear that the volume has come up on that particular cue. It's playing right along with the ambient cue. If I choose buzzer out, Then slowly over 25 seconds, that buzzer cue will fade away, and we should be able to identify it pretty early as it fades away there. Sounds like it's working correctly. Let's say then that the mech robot shows up. We hear the mech theme come in, and I can choose mech out, and over 25 seconds, we should hear those drums and the rest of the instrumentation fade away. You can already hear it going away. That's typically why a longer fade will work, is that it won't take long, or certainly the full 25 seconds before it does fade and starts getting masked by the rest of the audio that's currently heard, mainly the ambient cue. Then the spider comes in. The Battle of Spider. Spider comes back out. And that'll fade out over time. Now we're going to bring all three of them in and then act as if the player lost all of their health by triggering this player death. So, buzzer comes in. Mech comes in. Oh, that was out. Mech comes in. Spider comes in. And then we lose all of our health points. This fades out. Alright. And we continue to hear the start cue. Let's see what happens when we try the end of the level one. We're only currently on the start cue, or sorry, the ambient cue. So then I believe that's 10 seconds to fade out. When that's done, that should turn off the start there. So it seems that everything is working correctly. Everything is playing back properly. And actually, it does not turn this one off because it just fades everything out to silence. If I hit play again, it would fade that ambient cue back in. All right, now that we have tested out the bass music system, there is one more element that we need to add, and that is the stingers for each one of the in cues or in events that are played. The buzzer in, the mech in, and the spider in. So right as their action cues start to play, each one of these stingers are going to be heard also to emphasize the start of the battle and also hide a bit of that transition as the new piece of music fades in. So in order to do this, we're going to close out of our Soundcaster view. We're going to go into the buzzer in event, and we are going to set up a new action. We're just going to play a file, and we choose the particular stinger that we want to use. So this one is the buzzer stinger. Then we'll go to the mech in and create another play action here. And this one will go to the mech stinger. And then we have the spider. Create another play action. And this time we will choose the spider stinger. All right, that should be all that we need to do. We're going to test this out by opening the Soundcaster view back up. And we'll start by playing the start event. All right, once we have this one going and the buzzer cue starts playing, we should hear that stinger played right along with the action cue. Now we would need to go and balance the volumes, but we'll do that in probably another mix pass later. And then the buzzer ends, so we'll stop that. Then let's say the mech comes in. Or the spider cue comes in. We hit end of level. That should fade everything out. All right, so it sounds like the stingers are working. Sounds like the entire music system is set up to function and play back correctly. Let's go ahead. We're going to go to Project and save this. And next we will go into our sound effects. So we're going to start out here back in the designer view for our sound effects. And we're going to bring up the sound effects and import them into the actor mixer hierarchy. So I will go ahead and bring up the folder that had all of the assets in it. And this time I'm going to do sound effects. There's quite a bit more sound effects here and a couple of different categories we're going to set up. So I'm just going to highlight all of these and drag them into this default work unit and choose import. All of the default settings should be correct. So I'll hit import and bring all of these in. Now, when they are in blue, that means that they have not been converted into the format of the sound bank. So I can highlight all of these. Just click on the first one and shift click on the last one. And if I hit shift and C, or if I go up to edit and choose convert, we'll bring up this audio file conversion window, of which I only have one platform set up, so I can just hit OK here, and it's going to convert everything into the correct format for our sound bank. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a couple of different folders to organize our sound effects here. So I'm going to click on my default work unit and create one folder and call this ambiences. And then I'll click on my default work unit and title another one enemy for my enemy sounds. Create another one here for player, for my player sounds. And I'll create another one here for objects. And this is going to be like doors and computers in the game. So I will find all similar sounds and drag them into the correct folder. So my airlock doors, those are objects. My ambience is here. Those go into my ambience folder. Bullet hits and ricochets, those are objects. You know what? Let's put the... yeah, let's just put all of these in objects. That'll work for us. Flying buzzer, patrol mech, spider, those are all enemy sounds. Doors, locked doors, those are all objects. Player sounds, player hit, shooting, those are all player sounds. And terminal hacked would be an object. All right, this gives us some organization to work with for our files, and will give us the material that we need to set up for our events. So we're going to start out here with all of our ambiences. And one thing we need to do is turn on looping for each one of these, because they are endlessly looping ambiences. So we turn them on and we check looping over here. We set it to infinite, or it's already default set to infinite. And we do that for each one of them. Notice that they need to be reconverted. They're turning blue again. That means that they need to be reconverted for our sound banks in order to be correctly looping files. So I'm just going to go up here and choose edit and convert. And I'll do that for each one of those. So these files should be able to loop now, and we need to use these in the correct events. So I go to my sound effects events. I have ambience, enemy, object, and player. So I have a couple of different rain events. I have interior events. So I can just fill these up with the correct sounds. Now, Exterior rain, you notice they have 10, 25, and 30 on them, and those correspond to the correct attenuation values that you need. Let me jump back to this asset list, and this will help us as you move through all of your events to make sure that you know which files go to which events and their correct attenuation settings, and whether they're looping or not. Notice we've already done the looping for all of the sound effect, all of the ambiances. So the attenuation is going to give us a volume change over distance. And what that means is, since we don't want this rain to be playing everywhere, right? So when we go inside, we want the rain to go away. The rain only needs to exist in a certain area. And as you get farther and farther away from that area, the volume will fade out to silence. And so we can see the different attenuation values that are necessary. And to set that up, we can go and we have to go back to our audio tab, and the attenuation is done per sound. So I'll go to my first sound here, and I can set it up to in order to have the correct attenuation. And these are all going to be 3D sounds. If it's set to 2D, that means it plays everywhere. Kind of like 2D platformer, where all of the sounds just played everywhere because everything was always on screen. But now, since the rest of the level is off screen, you don't want sounds to be playing too far away from their sources. So I'm going to change all of my ambiances here and change these to 3D. And that will position them in the world, so I only hear those ambiances when I'm at that location. Now, our music is going to be 2D because it's basically going to play wherever you go. So those are some of the differences between 3D and 2D. So for this rain sound, anytime I choose 3D, now I have the ability to choose my attenuation. We have a couple of different attenuation values. This is how far away. The bigger the number, the farther away you can hear that sound. And we see for our rain sound that there's actually 3 events. Each one has a different attenuation. And so in order to do that, I'm going to go to my rain sound here, and I'm going to add, we've got one for 10. I'm going to click up here and change the name, and add the suffix to it. Then I'm going to copy that file. I'm going to hit Control-C. I'm going to click on ambiances here, and I'm going to paste it again. And this time, I'm going to set it up for 10, 25, and 30. So this one is going to be called Rain 25, and we're going to do it one more time. This one's going to be called 30, just so we know what we're talking about. And then I can set the correct attenuation for each one of these. I can go to the 10 here and choose the 10 attenuation setting. And just to show you what I mean here, if I hit Edit, you will see that there's a curve, or in this case it's a linear line, that goes from full volume or unity at 0 dB all the way down to -200, which is basically silence, and over a distance of 10 units. Now, what those units are actually controlled by the game. It depends on if your game is a game of inches. Maybe you're a bunch of ants on a tabletop fighting a game or playing a game, or you are doing a game on the intergalactic scale. The size of anything is relevant to the actual game. So these are default settings copied over from the game. So we're going to set the first rain to a max distance of 10 units. We're going to set the next one here to a max distance of 25 units, and this third one here to 30. Then we can go through our list and check the rest of these values. We have 8, 4, and 4, so dark, electric 1 and 2. So we do dark, and that is going to be set to 8. And electric 1 and 2. These are small sounds that you have to be real close to hear. So we'll set each one of those to 4. The hum here is going to be 10. Our mechanical whirring is 25, and then everything else is 10. So hum is 10. Mechanical whirring is 25, and then everything else is 10. Make sure that's 10. All right. So 10, 25, 10, 10, 10. Okay, now you'll notice that a lot of these don't need attenuation because they're mainly things that are happening with the enemies, and that's only heard while they're on screen. So those should be fine and set up correctly. Now let's just assign them to their corresponding events. And this should be really straightforward. All I have to do is choose the correct play action, and I'm going to choose Browse, and this time I'm going to go out of the interactive music system and go find my sounds, my different ambiences. So I'll choose my exterior rain and set that for my first event. I will browse to 25 to set for my next event. And this, I'm really just matching names at this point. Interior dark, so I browse for the interior dark wave file. Electric 1 and 2, I browse for those wave files. Hum. Next is mechanical whirring. Noise. Steam 1. And Steam 2. All right, now that we have all of our ambience events set up, we can test out each one of them, taking a listen. Here are our rain sounds. We've got interior dark, interior electric 1 and 2. Interior hum, mechanical whirring, noise, and steam. All right, so we have all of our ambience events set up. The next ones here, the enemy ones, and objects and player, all of these should be relatively straightforward, except for a few random containers that we need to set up. So I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to start out by combining a couple of these into random containers. And just to make my job life a little bit easier, I'm going to copy the name first. I've found that this helps when creating random containers. If I click on the particular folder that I want and then choose the random container icon here, I can just paste the name in and make my world a little bit easier. So I select the files that I want, and these spider footsteps are going to randomize each time they are played. Let me turn off this red icon so that it plays the correct one. Let's try that again. Spider footsteps are going to randomize. There it goes. Randomizes between these four. Let's see. Footsteps also need to randomize back and forth. So I'm going to take these and make another random container out of them. So I'm going to choose my enemy folder here, choose a random container. I'm going to copy the name there and paste the name in my random container. And I'll take both of these footsteps and drag them in. There we go. And actually, I don't want these to be completely random. I want them to well, either in this case, either standard or shuffle will work, but avoid repeating the last one, so they should alternate when they are played. All right, so it goes back and forth. What else? All of these sounds, the rest of these sounds are single sounds. Let's go into the objects here. And the bullet hits, these are going to be randomly played. So again, I'm going to take the name here, copy that, and create a new random container, and just paste that name in, and highlight these four and drag them into that random container. We also have ricochets. Those are going to be random. Copy the name. And paste the name. Bring in these 6 ricochets. And I'm just going to save just to make sure right now. And objects, what else? Player, the footsteps. The player footsteps need to have their own random container. So I will take the name here, copy that, and paste that name. And then I will drag in these 4 footstep files in there. And right, we hear some variation there. Okay, those are the random containers. Those are kind of the special setup of any one of those sound effects. The rest of the setup will have you placing the correct sound effect in the proper event. And so to make that even more straightforward, we have our asset list that lists the name, the event, and the category for any one of these sounds, and whether or not they're looping. And actually, we have a couple of looping files that we should probably address. We have the ambiences. Those are already set up to loop. And the rest of these are going to be, the only other one we need is this shooting file, the player shooting. So let's go find that one. Let's go to the audio and find SFX player shooting and turn that one on to loop also. We might as well convert it to make it work properly. You can hit edit, convert, and then hit OK to do that. Now, I will, I'm going to do this separately, but I would have you go through each one of these events and set them up according to the asset list. So I'm going to take a quick pause here and come back after that is completed. All right. I have all of my sound effects events set up except for the last one here, just to show you the process that I went through. I have my play sound effects player shooting and my stop sound effects player shooting. And so all I did with each one of these events is clicked on the particular one that I wanted to set up and then choose browse and choose the sound that I want to affect. So this will start the player shooting. The stop is a little bit different than all of the other ones because it's the only one that we want to stop on a regular basis. So we choose a stop event this time and we go back to stop that player shooting and we want it to stop immediately. So that is what I have done through each one of these events. I'll just go through here and double check that everything looks like it is set up correctly. At this point, I would definitely suggest you play through your events to make sure that things are playing back properly. It looks like I don't have my Patrol Mech Destroyed Explosion set up correctly. For some reason, it is set to the playlist. Doesn't look like I clicked properly. So this is the Patrol Mech Destroyed Explosion. So enemy, Patrol Mech Destroyed Explosion. Yes, replace the one that was there. And just double check your work to make sure that everything is set up properly. Okay. There were a couple of other attenuation values that I should address. We did attenuation on all of our ambiances so that the ambiances would not be playing completely across the map. The other things that can play kind of away from you are the doors. Since they exist in other places that the character isn't at currently, there is a possibility that you might hear these open or close where some location that you are not in. And I also have noticed that all of the doors close when the game starts. I guess they default in their open state, and so when if you don't set this up properly, you'll actually hear the doors close when you first start the game. So all I need to do, each one of these are set to an attenuation of 25. So I'll go back, close all these down, just do the doors, and I'll select each one of these and go to the positioning tab and change them to 3D so that it actually positions them where they are in the game. It plays the sound from the actual door as opposed to just everywhere. And I said all of these need to be set to 25. So I'll go through each one of these doors and set its particular value to 3D and an attenuation to 25 units. This should make it so that the doors are only heard when they are opening and closing right next to you. Oh, well, I guess the terminal hacked is not necessary. We'll switch that back to 2D. All right, now that everything is set up correctly, I'm going to hit save here. I'm just going to run through everything just to make sure that it is set up properly, right? So we've got our music playlist. We've got all of our music tracks and our music segment into our music playlist. We've got our stingers set up. We have all of our sound effects imported and set into the proper random containers if necessary. Now, the volumes of all of these, depending on how loud you bounced out your music and your sound effects, they are probably quite a bit all over the place and would need to be mixed a bit later on. So those look like they're set up ready to go. In the Events tab, all of our music is ready to go. All of our sound effects are set up to play back properly. So, at this point, I think I'm ready to build everything and test it out in the game. So I'm just going to hit save one more time. And now I can generate that sound bank to build all of our audio data in it. So I'm going to go to Layouts, and I'm going to go to the sound bank layout. And I want to make sure that the default work unit is checked, that the particular sound bank is checked. More than likely, those might already be set up for you. That the platform is checked, that the language is checked properly. And if everything is set up and ready to go, I should be able to hit generate now. And assuming that everything was set up correctly, this is going to generate into the application folder. So we see it says completed with messages, evaluation mode. We have a total of 55 music items out of the 200 permitted, so we're nowhere near our limit yet. So we should be just fine. We can close out of there, and I'm just going to bring Wwise out of the way, give myself some desktop here, and let's back up a folder here. And here is our AngryBots application. Now, you don't have to do this. This is not a required step, but just to show you that these files are generated, and the sound bank has been properly generated, I can right click, I can choose Show Package Contents. It gives me a folder named Contents. I go into Contents, I go into Resources, Data, Streaming Assets, Audio, Generated Sound Banks, and Mac, and you should see that this sound bank right here was generated today, or generated right now at the time that you hit generate. So seeing that that is set up correctly, let's test everything out in our game and go ahead and launch AngryBots. All of my default settings should be good, ready to go. All right, let's go ahead and test everything in the game by launching the game application. We will use the default settings here. Go ahead and play it. We notice immediately that everything is extremely loud, so we need to be able to fix that pretty quickly. And in order to get a quick rough mix, I'm going to add something in here to my audio objects. I'm going to add an actor mixer that allows us to control the volume of everything below that, below the actor mixer. So I can click on my ambiences folder here and create a new actor mixer. I'm going to call this ambiences. Then I'm going to drag all of my ambiences into that folder. Then I'm going to go to my enemy folder here, create another actor mixer and call this enemy. And then drag all of my enemy sounds in there. Click on my objects folder and create a new actor mixer there called objects. Now you could go adjust the individual volume of each one of these sounds, but an actor mixer allows for that to happen in just one fader. So this last one will be player, and I will drag in all of my player sounds. All right, that looks good. I'm just going to generate this so it's ready to go for the game. And I will launch the game and then connect to it and fade down the volumes of these different sounds as quickly as I can. So let's go ahead and launch the game, and then I will connect and change the levels. Sorry about that. Looks like the ambiences are doing a lot of that. We can hear the sounds fire off each time. And we can hear the sounds play. We can hear the ambiences play. It's down, way down. We can hear our footsteps. We can hear the music. We can hear the change to the music system. I can go into the profiler layout, and I can see all the sounds that pass by as I progress through. And we can hear the music coming in. So it would seem the rest of these sound effects are much louder than the music. The music has its own fader down here. that I can turn up and down according to what's going on in the game. I probably don't want to turn it up, down. Oh, sorry. I probably don't want to turn it up. I just want to turn the rest of the sound effects down. At this point, it is mostly about mixing the levels and making sure that everything plays back correctly, testing out each one of the sounds, making sure that everything is triggering and is going to be mixed properly. So it'll be a lot of back and forth, playing the game, listening to what's happening, and making adjustments. Remember, anything that is done in real time while you are remotely connected to the game, all of those changes are lost when you disconnect, or they're not permanent. Let's put it this way: it's not permanently saved in the game until you go back and generate the sound bank again. So those level fades and changes are not captured permanently in the game until you generate the sound banks. So this hopefully gives you a in-depth overview of how you can set up the music and sound effects of AngryBots. Again, this is the default setup. There's a whole lot of variation and change that hopefully you can explore and come up with your own approach to how the music and sound effects are going to work in this game project. So please let me know if you have any questions or if you're running into any issues or challenges in making all of this work. We can work our way through any sort of troubleshooting issues. All right, enjoy AngryBots, and thanks a lot.